So I say, well, I say this to you, you say, well, he's completely reliable and trustworthy and so on, so he must have proved that I won $500 and that the sun is shining. Isn't that great? But wait, can you derive from this that you've won $500? No, the inference is not legitimate, right? You can only derive from this things that follow from both of these. From the mere fact that the sun is shining, it unfortunately does not follow that you won $500. But this tells you, no, you need both to draw the conclusion that you won $500. So that's sad. So when you think about the introduction rule, you're happy. And then when you think about the elimination rule, you're sad. And you have no way of reaching a stable emotional position here. In fact, you don't even know what I told you. You don't know what I said using that sign, star. So when there's a lack of balance, with tonk, there's this obviously absurd thing happens that you get contradictions. With offensive language, this thing happens where you can derive all kinds of wild conclusions about the people you're dealing with from these innocuous facts about their membership of one group or another. But there's something even more basic here in this lack of balance that shows up even in this case. Well, nobody's going to say this is weird, but it's not exactly offensive, right? And it's not that you're going to get a contradiction from it. It still doesn't make any sense. Even if there's a whole bunch of people doing this, even if there's a custom or practice of talking like this, it still doesn't make an ounce of sense. There's no way of saying what this means. And Wittgenstein's approach can't explain what's going on here. This is just going through the reasoning here. If you're told that someone tells you that you won $500 star, the sun is shining, they've only got the right to say that if both of these are true. But you're not allowed to infer that you've won $500 or that the sun is shining. You can't infer either of these. So you don't know what's being said. So it seems to me there has to be such a thing. I mean, Wittgenstein must be wrong about this. I mean, I know it sounds kind of funny to say that, but it can't be right. There must be such a thing as justifying or criticising a custom. Tonk and star are really quite pure laboratory cases where you say, look, here are customs where there is obviously something wrong with them. I mean, if there were a whole bunch of people using them. And in the case of offensive language, you get offensive language that is used by whole tranches of people, by whole nations. And there's certainly a custom of using the sign in this way. But it's not enough to say, well, here we reach bedrock and the spade is turned. You just can criticise it. People do criticise it. That happens the whole time. So there must be. So how do you go about it? How do you begin in saying in a general way what you're doing when you're justifying or criticising a custom? Well, suppose you take the simple case, the laboratory case. Suppose you take the truth table there for A and B, and you say, look, the thing is, for A and B, I've got a truth table, and I derive the rules of the way of using A and B from that. You know, I say that's where Wittgenstein went wrong. I always have to know what has to be the case for a sentence using the sign to be true. That's what justifies me in using the sign the way I do. And you can't write a truth table for tonk. I mean, how would it go? So if I get A tonk B, suppose they're both true. Suppose they're both true, is A tonk B true? Yes, I think pretty clearly it's true. Yeah, because where we go? Okay. If I've got A, I can conclude A tonk B. If I've got B, I can conclude A tonk B. If I've got A tonk B, I can conclude A. If I've got A tonk B, I can conclude B. So if this comes out true when they're both true, then that all works, right? Is that all right? You follow me very closely. Yeah, you see that. That makes sense of the top line. It makes sense of the bottom line too. Yeah. Okay. Suppose A is true and B is false. Is A tonk B true or false? True. Okay, well, since we've got A is true, then A tonk B has got to come out true, right? A tonk B has got to come out true. But if A tonk B comes out true, then B comes out true. So this must be true. If you see what I mean. Yeah. But that can't be right because this was the F line. Yeah. So if B is false, this is going to be coming out false. But if A is true, then the whole thing has to be coming out true. Okay. So you can't actually put anything in here. Yeah, you have no idea what goes in there. Yeah, there's no way of filling this in. If you say, well, suppose A is false and B is true. True? False? Okay, it's just the same as before, right? The situation is exactly symmetrical. Since B is true, I can conclude A tonk B, so the whole thing must be true. But then if the whole thing is true, then A is going to be true. Yeah. So you can't write anything in here. And if they're both false, well, that's okay, this whole thing is going to come out false. But you can't actually do a truth table for it, right? So you might say that's the trouble with it, you can't do a truth table. So the truth table we should really think of as giving you your instructions for the use of the sign, the pattern of use that you make of the sign. But Wittgenstein's point was, whenever you've got that bit in the middle that is telling you how to use the sign, it turns out that it can't actually do the work. It can't dictate to you how to use the sign. And if you think about it, that's right. That's got to be right. Because suppose you didn't know how to reason logically, and I gave you the truth table, and I said, okay, now get on with it, figure out how you're going to reason logically. You can't do it. You can't derive the rules for these logical signs from truth tables. Because to do the derivation, you have to already be capable of logical reasoning. Like when I was just doing that thing with tonk, the whole time I was saying, well, if this, then that. If both of these, then one, then this. You see what I mean? You've got to be using logical reasoning to do the derivation. So actually for these cases, Wittgenstein's basic point is really powerful. You can't derive logic from truth tables, because to do any kind of derivation, you have to already be using logic, be reasoning logically. I don't know, so someone a couple of weeks ago said, we should think of having an objective in using the language. Right? And you can think of knowledge of what has to be the case for a sentence to be true as defining your objective. So there's a basis in which you use the sign, there's a conclusion you draw from your use of the sign, and in between there is something like your sense of what you're up to in using the sign, your goal in using the sign. And you might say, well, Wittgenstein's right about not being able to derive your use of the sign from some justification. Maybe what happens is we just do have our customs and practices. We have our customs and practices of reasoning logically, of shared senses of humour, of what is a joke, of what is an insult, and so on. We have all these shared customs and practices, and they're not derived from something else. You can't force other people to use them by appeal to knowledge of truth conditions or truth tables or anything like that. But what you do is you make your practice intelligible to yourself using truth conditions or truth tables. So you might find that the whole community is using A and B. People usually reason in accordance with the rules of inference for A and B. And then there's such a thing as saying, what are we doing here? What are we up to? And after the fact, in the context of your actual custom or practice, you can make it intelligible to yourself by giving the truth table. I mean, that's actually, when I've taught elementary logic, that's actually what happens. That you first of all drill the whole class and you say, don't bother about what any of this means, just do the following. And you lay down the rules of inference and you say, just do it, just learn this stuff. And then you say, well, look, here's what's going on. Here's the truth table for A and B. This is what you were doing the whole time. That makes sense of it all. Now it all drops into place. And at that point, everyone says, no, it doesn't. What do you mean? But that's what's meant to happen, right? But you're meant to have it all drop into place once you get the truth table. This makes sense of what we were doing with those rules of inference, or with arrow or hook that people usually find quite difficult. You just learn how to use it, and then the truth table is meant to make sense of it all, make it intelligible. Now with Tonk, if we found ourselves using Tonk, and then you said, and now make sense of it to yourself, it's not that you derive your use of Tonk from this, but give the truth table that explains to me what's going on here. That's when you discover you can't do it. So it would be possible to agree with Wittgenstein that you don't derive your customs or practices from anything more fundamental, but still say there's got to be such a thing as making the custom or practice intelligible, saying what we're up to in using the sign this way, saying what has to be the case for sentences using the sign to be true. So with Tonk and, you get these very pure laboratory cases. But with the same point applies to any kind of racist language or offensive language generally, where you can say it's not just that we have this custom or practice, we have to be able to describe what we're actually saying in using these signs. And when you insist on clarity in what we're actually saying, what it takes for a sentence using this sign to be true, that's when it is going to emerge that you can't make this intelligible, that there's no objective to be had. So that would respect Wittgenstein's basic point that your custom or practice is not derived from something more fundamental. The actual use of the sign is more fundamental than your knowledge of truth conditions. But we do accept that there is such a thing as making your use of a sign intelligible, explaining what the point of it is, explaining what your objective is in using the sign. And if you can't do that, then you have to abandon the use of the sign. Okay? That's the end of the message for today. So we'll be podcasting on Wednesday. Right. Okay. Right.